You're welcome on the Pulse, and you know that Tuesday, December 10 will mark a Human Rights Day. This year's event is in celebration of 70 years since the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The UDHR, which was adopted in 1948, has since been ratified by Ghana's Parliament with the passage of laws including the Children's Act 1998, Act 560, the Domestic Violence Act 2007, Act 732, and the Disability Act 2006, Act 715. This year's event is under the theme Stand Up for the Rights. And ahead of the event, we're asking, to what extent are these rights guaranteed, and how empowered are Ghanaians when these rights are violated? Joining me in the studio to explore this further is Bismarck Peter, who is head of planning of this year's event, and also in the studio is Apim Mariata, who is from the Center for Conflict, Human and Peace from the University of Education, Winneba. Good afternoon to you, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
And very refreshing to have you on the Pulse. First of all, how far have we come when we talk about human rights in this country? Let me start with Bismarck.
Right. Right from 1948, when the UDR was adopted, which Ghana is also signatory to it. To some extent, we've done so much because the Constitution, the Ghanaian Constitution, has all the human rights principles embedded in it. And we are enjoying this right today. Even the media is enjoying the rights. Children are, to some extent, enjoying the rights. We also adopted a lot of other Bill of Rights in Ghana. And I think some of these things are prerequisite to enjoy more of our liberties and economic freedom. Because if you look at countries like Libya, Eritrea, and other countries, you will have seen that to some extent they are still not having the freedom we are enjoying in Ghana. And Ghana is one of the most hospitable countries. It's not just because of our condition of democracy, but the human rights tenets are being implemented in some of our institutions. To some extent, we also had the stretch also as an institution of human rights, doing so well to some extent when it comes to certain human rights issues. We are human rights lawyers of late who are also doing so well, like Francis Xavier Sosu. And then recently, we also have these human rights courses being taught in schools and undergrads at the University of Education, like the child rights taught by some lecturers. At the University of Ghana, we have other lecturers who are also taking human rights at liberal courses. So it tells you that to some extent, right from 1948 up to 2018 in Ghana, of which we are celebrating the 70th anniversary, it seems Ghana to some extent has gone a long way. Even though to some extent, I think the human rights issues are still not well known to people, but I think the state, as a duty bearer, has also done so well to making sure that we enjoy those rights. In almost in all situations, education, health, everything, you are enjoying that. Even though it's not enough, I think it's better than none.
Better than none. Good to hear that we're actually celebrating 70 years of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It was passed in 1948, right. And 70 years on. First, let's look at what the objectives were when this was passed. Apim, sorry.
Okay, basically, I'll start from why the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Okay, let me seize the opportunity to say a very good evening to your cherishable viewers out there, and also to the lecturers in my department, especially Dr. Golo Harry Kwame. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights came into being on the 10th of December 1948, and then the UN deemed it necessary to have this declaration simply because during the First World War, or World War I, so many atrocities were committed. And then it happened between the period of 1914 to 1918, the First World War. And we had 16 million people, died during that period. Then the Second World War also occurred between 1939 to 1945. Which also claimed about 50 million
so
to
it means
80
that
million
yeah, so a lot of atrocities were
committed,
and that's the reason why this came to being. So the objective was actually to free people from this kind of atrocities,
and also to protect
the rights of the individual. Do you think we've achieved this so far?
Oh, I think so far we have done something as a nation, because from the international community, after the First World War, Second World War, there was the Cold War, which also lasted for 4 decades. And then this Cold War couldn't get hot because of this declaration or other things like deterrence and then deterrence and containment. Okay, so as a nation, coming back to Ghana here, I would say we have done something. Simply because when we talk of human rights, we have 3 basic generations of rights. We have the first generation of rights, which has to do with civil and political, and it is negative in nature.
I mean, I think it's the reason, for instance, this thing was passed and it was ratified in Ghana's parliament. And like you heard me mention earlier, we've passed a number of laws that will help us ensure that this thing has really been achieved. But there are a lot of people who think that even though we've ratified this, we haven't really achieved that. So, Bismarck, what do you think? In all of this, what do you think? To what extent has the right of the Ghanaian been guaranteed?
Right, I think we've not had any measurable statistics that we could say maybe out of all the protocols and other documents we've had, to some extent maybe we've got to maybe 70% of all these documents we have achieved. But I would say that even though Ghana has assented to a lot of these declarations, you'd have seen that we are still not assented to one basic one, which is the second protocol to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which talks aiming at abolishing the death penalty, which is one thing that I think almost all the Commonwealth countries in West Africa has been able to do. But in all, even though those things aren't enough, you'd have seen that we have done so well to making sure that certain human rights issues are well taken care of. Because of late, you might have seen that any little thing that goes beyond the reach of the individual, I mean, goes away from the individual, be able to go to the law court to seek for redress.
Yeah.
And this has prompted a lot of these UN organizations to set up committees to look into some of these. For example, we have the Child Rights Committee of the United Nations. We have other committees looking into child trafficking and others. So it tells you that we cannot measure because we don't have that. And then we also do not have lots of the human rights reports coming out from Ghana and other West African countries and even other regional blocs that we can say that comparatively, maybe Ghana has achieved more than other countries. Even though there are other indexes around the world, like the Economic Freedom Index, the World Bank Index of Doing Business, the other development indexes even from the UN, we are still lagging behind because human rights talks about the universal respect and the enforcement and the promotion of the right of each and every individual.
Right.
You can also see that most of our budgets and policies that we normally enroll or formulate and implement are not right-based.
Okay.
We prepare budgets, but we do not make the budget using the right-based approach. So we pick up the declarations. If you pick up the Article 1, for example, that talks about cooperation in promoting and enforcing the fundamental freedom for all, irrespective of your color, religion, or whatever. But if you look at employment, for example, you will see that there are certain things we have distinctions based on political affiliation. As a result, we are moving away from this kind of covenant that we have already assented to. So it's a violation. And these are some of the things we are not addressing in our policies. We are not addressing them in our budgets. And once the budget is not right-based approach, it tells you that we are still behind in achieving the necessary tenets and principles we need to have and make sure that we enjoy the fundamental rights evenly, and not a situation where a group of individuals who enjoy it at the expense of the majority.
And as it is now, it's not equal. I mean, we can't talk of equality when we talk about fundamental human rights. But Francis Sosu has also joined us. He's a human rights lawyer, and he's also talking about this celebration. Fantastic strides we've made 70 years after the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But after 70 years, what good can we talk about this? And he just spoke about how our rights, we cannot talk about 100% guarantee for our rights as individuals, but are we even empowered enough to actually talk of how to deal with this violation? If our rights are violated, are we empowered enough to fight for our rights?
Well, thank you very much. I would say that we have a lot of problems when it comes to people enforcing their rights. And like you rightly pointed out, not many Ghanaians are empowered enough. In the first place, not many people even understand their rights, much less to talk about enforcing it. And we have all kinds of social and religious barriers that prevent people from enforcing their rights. We've had situations where children have been violated, and at the point that you are holding the perpetrator responsible, you have chiefs and community leaders, some pastors intervening to, settle the matter, and they do that at the expense of the victim that has been violated. Now, quite apart from that, anytime policemen stop drivers, it's so clear that the driver is at the mercy of the police officer. And if you dare say that, oh, I want to see my lawyer before I make a statement, the police even thinks that you are even violating him or violating orders.
Yeah.
So clearly, we have a situation where not many people are empowered to fight for their rights, and I'm hoping that such celebrations and such fora would give us opportunity to educate people, empower people, so they can go out there and become ambassadors for human rights promotion.
We all know that there are arrangements, institutional arrangements that help in protecting these rights. And we're talking about the judicial system as a whole. We have the courts, High Court, Appeal Court, Supreme Court. We have the ADR system, arbitration, and all of that. But are these institutions or arrangements enough to actually protect these rights? Are we seeing the positive sides enough?
Well, these institutions, in my view, are enough, except that they haven't been very, very effective as they should be, and that is where the problem lies. I know that, Shraj is a very good partner when it comes to protection of fundamental rights, and I have personally sent a number of petitions to Shraj based on one violation or the other. But what has been the case is that their activities have been extremely slow. And recently we had the opportunity to discuss on this medium the case of 16-year-old Christopher Obama, who was abused by military men, and to date we still have not been able to get any the report from Shraj. And these are almost 3 years since that violation. That would not encourage other people to want to seek redress through Shraj. Then again, when you go to the courts, there are many times that one person has been violated, he gets to court, and it takes you 2 years, 3 years, sometimes more, before you can get remedy from the courts. And all these things, all these delays actually serve as a disincentive to people who have been violated. So yes, we have institutional arrangements, but the effectiveness of our institutions to enforce the fundamental rights of our citizens is what is
quickly, let's look at the theme for this year's event, Stand Up for Your Rights. What does that mean to the individual?
Well, stand up for your rights simply means that, look, you need to be up and doing. You should be able to speak when your right is being violated. You should be able to stand, and fight for your rights when they are being violated. And not only you, but we are looking at you being able to stand up for, the rights of other people. So it's stand up for rights. So anywhere you see any violation, Make sure you don't close your eyes on it. Make sure you become an ambassador. Give a voice to the voiceless. You know, be the leg to the cripple, and just make sure that you are an eye to that blind person. Just it's a clarion call of our society,
on all of us,
yes, to rise up,
our
to rise up
rights
and
are
yes,
protected.
exactly.
I want to say a very big thank you to you, Francis. So you didn't join us early, but
I know.
I think that we've exhausted the time well. Hopefully we'll do more on human rights on Tuesday, December 10.
No, it's actually on a Monday.
Monday,
yes.
December, when the Human Rights Day is celebrated. Many thanks for your time. Let's take a